Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again across the Louisiana plain, where we are advancing the cause of constitutional freedom and liberty, raising the profile of great constitutional conservative candidates across the state of Louisiana, and day by day, steadily, relentlessly, inexorably, and courageously draining the Louisiana swamp. My name is Chris.
And I'm Danielle, and this is the State of Freedom, brought to you by freedom-loving Louisiana First Patriots. Hello, State of Freedom warriors. Thank you so much for inviting us to be part of your day. We are so grateful for you. You are the best of the best, the cream of the crop, the best listening family anyone could possibly hope for. And you know that we're only here because of your encouragement, your prayers, your friendship, your financial support. And if you are looking for a way to support us, to advertise with us, or to send us feedback, please do that at freedomstate.us. We would also love it if you would help us get the word out about the State of Freedom and help spread the reach. Please like the show on whatever platform you listen to us, subscribe to it, and share it. You can share short clips instead of the whole interview or whole episode over on our YouTube and Rumble channels. And links to those, as you know, are always in the show notes and over on freedomstate.us. Moms for Liberty East Baton Rouge Parish Chapter is dedicated to fighting for the survival of America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend and take back their parental rights at all levels of government. To learn more or to get involved with Moms for Liberty East Baton Rouge, email momsforlibertybatonrouge@gmail.com. That's moms, the number 4, libertybatonrouge@gmail.com. The email address is on the Patriot page of our website, freedomstate.us, and it's in the show notes. Well, joining us today is a real treat. We have Representative Mike Bayham back on the show for the first time as a sitting representative in the State House of Louisiana. Before we bring him on, let me read the scripture of the day. It's Psalm chapter 111, verses 7 through 10, and it says, "All God accomplishes is flawless, faithful, and fair, and his every word proves trustworthy and true. They are steadfast forever and ever, formed from truth and righteousness. His forever love paid a full ransom for his people, so that now we're free to come before God to worship his holy and awesome name. Where can wisdom be found? It's born in the fear of God. Everyone who follows his ways will never lack his living understanding, and the adoration of God will abide throughout eternity." Isn't it so encouraging that God is flawless, faithful, fair, trustworthy, and true? No matter what happens, he is the one that we can always rely on. He never fails, he never forgets, he never lies, he never leaves, and he never loses. He paid the full price for our sin through his death on the cross so that we would be fully and completely set free. And our natural response to receiving his gift of freedom and salvation is to worship and reverence him. And that's the place where we find wisdom. When we are living in the reverential fear or the awe of the living God, the scripture promises that none of us will ever lack the understanding we need and the wisdom we need when we're in that place.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Danielle. And, he promises that we'll never lack the understanding that we need in order to do what we need to do. But I find it so interesting that it's impossible to exhaust the mystery of God. Even when we are in tune with him and are operating under his influence, we still, see really just a very, very, very small fraction of the ultimate mystery of God, which is what I find so powerful. I really think that if we really knew God in full now in this life, I think maybe it would overwhelm us because of his incredible majesty. But he certainly always gives us what we need to proceed, and being able to operate under his influence is an incredible gift, and also really a responsibility. And speaking of someone who knows about operating under the influence of God as a real statesman, since he was elected to the legislature, we had an opportunity to endorse Representative Bayham and in his run. And since he's been in there, he's done some really, really great things. Such a pleasure to have you on with us today. Mike, how are you?
Doing fine. I appreciate y'all hosting me on the program again.
You're always welcome.
Well, it has been
Absolutely always welcome. And we definitely made the right call endorsing you. And one of the things that I've noticed since you've been in the legislature is that you're not always standing up and speaking. You're not always using the bully pulpit. But when you do, it's always significant and it's always meaningful. And I wanted to start off, if I could today, Mike, with something that we were really, really stoked by on this SB 98. I think this is the 14th or 15th time, whatever, that this bill that would criminalize the use of a handheld cell phone in a vehicle has been brought. And you were the force majeure on the House floor, we think, that defeated this horrible legislation. And before we get into this, we want to play a clip of your comments in opposition on the House floor. Certainly you spoke longer than this, but this is a clip that really jumped out at me and I thought was very compelling and really swung a lot of votes on the House floor in defeating this legislation. So let's listen to that and then let's talk about it.
It's about revenue harvesting. That's what this is about. And this is not right. This state needs to quit harassing people and coming up with new ways to take money out of people's pockets. I'm tired of seeing, we cannot say that this state's trying to be open for business while coming up new and innovative ways to take money out of people's pocket. Representative Muscarella said something that I think everyone really needs to ponder. You will have to go to court. You will have to take time off of work. And by the way, if you're getting written up for this, guess what? You're probably a wage earner. So when you're not at your job, you're not getting paid. You're in court, and by the way, you're going to have to hire a lawyer too. I mean, is this really what this state needs? Is this our path to prosperity? Absolutely not. You know.
That was so awesome, Representative Bayham. And we didn't have time to put the full clip in, as Chris mentioned, but I also love how you really talked about that this is a bill that would disproportionately impact the poor. And they would be targeting wage earners, and they would be targeting people that would have to actually lose money to take time off of work. So yeah, thank you for just so passionately and I think very succinctly bringing forward that argument.
Well, I know this argument because I've experienced this argument. A few years ago, I evacuated to Florida because of a hurricane was coming. And while having my truck loaded up with, what I could carry, I got pulled over by a Florida state trooper on the ironically named Ronald Reagan Turnpike tollway.
That is ironic.
So I get pulled over. I drive like a grandmother. Look, I have a truck that's 2007, 300,000 miles. The only way I'm speeding in this truck is if I have a tailwind, okay?
I can relate.
So he pulls me over, and he asks me, do you know why I pulled you over? And I really had no idea. I said, no, I don't. I said, well, you were using a cell phone. I said, yes, I was looking at my phone to see which exit I needed to get off of. And by the way, my AC wasn't working that day, which was causing my eyes to get irritated from sweat. So I needed to put the phone right up to my face so I could see the thing because I couldn't use my glasses because they were fogged up. It's like something out of My Cousin Vinny. And it's like, well, right. We have a law against holding your cell phone. And I'm like, well, what about the law about that truck that's going 120 miles per hour past me right now? And by the way, if you're worried about safety, I'm more likely to get killed on his shoulder right now because I've been pulled over for glancing at a phone than all these people that are speeding all over the place. Well, I mean, typically, I was saying this respectfully. Obviously I wasn't in a good mood. Only had 3 hours of sleep because it took forever to get through contraflow on the evacuation. So of course I'm getting a ticket for just looking at my phone. And well, he said, you're going to have to pay this ticket. And I'm like, well, fine. So I was pretty aggravated about that. And then to truly put the cherry on the sundae of statism, I decide I'm going to fight the ticket. So I call up the clerk of court in Lake County or Tavares County, whatever it is in Florida, which I guess their GDP is speeding tickets or whatever, and gas stations. But so I'd like to go appear in court to fight this ticket. Well, we can't have you do that, sir. So why? Oh, COVID. I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? Well, we're doing everything via Zoom now. So basically, I don't get an opportunity to appear in court to fight this ticket that I consider unjust. So now you'll have to do it via Zoom. And by the way, you're going to have to pay court costs if you do. Like, whatever, fine. Tell me the day. I'll Zoom in. So I have to go do this thing on Zoom. Well, they give you an appointed time. I log on to the Zoom link, and I'm there. But guess who's not there? The trooper. Well, at this point, I immediately try to move to dismiss because the person with the issued the ticket wasn't there. I'm not a lawyer, but I think that's how it works.
Absolutely a confrontation clause issue there.
They immediately put me on hold for 45 minutes. So I have no ability to argue or anything. I've literally been put in timeout. Well, 45 minutes to get the trooper on the phone because they weren't expecting me to actually have to do this. So apparently this guy's writing someone else a ticket, so he finally jumps on the Zoom call, all parked on the side of the road, on a phone.
Oh, come on.
Of course.
Yeah.
So he could use a phone to do a court appearance, and I ended up having to pay the fee and the fine. I mean, they ruled against me. They didn't even hear me out.
Not to mention the amount of time they wasted. I mean, time is money.
Well, that's right. But that is exactly why I fought it, because I figured if I could tie this trooper up for an hour, he can't write any tickets. So that's my gift.
Paying it forward.
You're doing a civic service.
That was
you're
my
doing a service
gift
to the community.
People on the Ronald Reagan Turnpike that weren't getting written up. And by the way, after I got stopped, who does this man pull over? Not somebody speeding, because they are speeding all over this turnpike, but some little old couple in a tiny little truck, a little camper on the back. Why? They weren't speeding, cell phone. So this is going after people who don't have Bluetooth, whose cars are old, and I think it's a form of economic harassment, and it's revenue harvesting. And it's not about, it's never about safety. These speed cameras are not about safety. They're about revenue. They're about revenue. And if it's important enough about a safety issue, put a cop there. Because then they could potentially see other things wrong. Or maybe the person will have a gun on them or drugs or something. If it's about safety, you could put a human being there. It's not. It's about automatic ticketing and revenue generation. So
exactly. And they have no proposed alternative, right? What is their proposed alternative? Well, you pay them a ticket first, and then they want you to pay to, if you can, upgrade your car to have a Bluetooth.
Well, you can't upgrade your car.
Exactly.
If you do it it's going to be some confounded thing. And look, here's the reality of the situation, and this got brought up on a colleague. And if you want to know my passion on the floor that day, It's because I was reliving in my mind what I went through, the unfairness of it, the unfairness of the ticket, the complete hypocrisy of public safety when there were people going over 100 miles an hour, the fact that my life was endangered being on the side of a turnpike with all this fast-moving traffic, so I could be issued a ticket, watching this trooper cherry pick who he's going after. He's going after little old people because they know they're not going to argue. They're not going to be a dangerous pullover. A guy with the souped-up vehicle and the truck going 100 miles an hour, he may have a gun on him. So he ain't going to pull
That's
him
right.
over because he wants to pull over mom and pop. So
yeah, you called it the low hanging fruit, Mike. You
yeah,
called it the low
it's
hanging
low
fruit.
hanging fruit ticket. So I say, look, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative, but I can tell you, I am not the mascot of the party of the rich. I am not someone who's lived a grand life. All right, look, and to some degree, I don't resent it because it gives me perspective. I try to look at things from the view of the consumer and the working man, the person struggling. And that's, look, some of my colleagues drive very nice cars but I don't, so I kind of like how does the average citizen deal with these things? And the reality of it is that eventually we're all going to have to get new cars because you can't drive a car forever. God knows I've tried. But eventually I'm going to have a vehicle that's going to have a Bluetooth, and everyone's going to have a vehicle with Bluetooth, and the whole matter is going to be moot. Now, what else are people doing while they're driving? They're eating, they're drinking, they're putting on makeup, they're FaceTime. Which, by the way, if this bill would have just dealt with FaceTiming, I'd have been all for that. I've actually seen people hold their phones up to their face. I could see their heads bobbing in conversation while looking into a phone, which has got to be one of the most ignorant practices anyone could ever do. You want to do a ticket for that? I'm all for it. I will write the bill, but
or even for the texting, Mike, or even for the texting.
Well, I think you already get a ticket for texting. I think that is illegal.
That's right.
So, but when you're FaceTiming, that's texting. You're looking down, you see something, you're going to look down for many reasons. You're going to change the CD in your car. You're going to change your climate control. People look down all the time. This whole thing where everyone's staring out their window, we all know that's a farce. But, look, it's not good practice, but it's reality. But FaceTiming, that's unforgivable, in my opinion. And because that's just irresponsible, and it shows societal indifference, and someone can end up getting crippled because someone had to have their conversation while looking at their friend in the face on a phone. But back to this subject, I was very passionate on the bill. I think a lot of those votes were probably against to start with, truth be told. You have a very conservative freshman class that in the legislature that just sees this as government statism harassment. And look, one of the people who actually voted for the bill confided to me later, yeah, I'm the worst on this thing. I don't know why I voted for the bill.
Oh.
But
Yeah.
that happens. Look, we take hundreds of votes. So
well, Mike, you're very humble about this, because I'll tell you, our perspective, LACAG's perspective, the State of Freedom's perspective, when the bill was headed into the House, we didn't really know for sure what was going to happen because of what happened in the Senate. They didn't even think twice about voting for this.
Well, if you recall, this was always passed the House, and it was the Senate that would. Well, it's the House that's always passed the bill. As Representative Hubel used to always push this bill, who was from St. Martin Parish, and it's the Senate that killed. And by the way, this was a bill where I actually testified as a private citizen last year in Senate Transportation, where we killed it there. I believe we killed it there. If not there, we killed it on the floor of the Senate, one of the two. But Susie Labrie, she does not get the credit she deserves as being a perpetual presence at the Capitol, notifying people about critical bills. She is truly a citizen lobbyist that that we should all be very appreciative of her efforts as a volunteer and as a passionate patriot, and an advocate. But we killed it in the House, which we got a different breed of cat in the House. Because remember, the difference between last year and this year is a lot of those people who voted for the bill in the House are now senators. A lot of the people that were, so they're not in the House. So they've been replaced. They've been replaced by liberty-oriented people like Beth Billings and Jay Galley and all these other folks that are philosophical, not just conservatives, but they're freedom-centric in their thinking. And it cannot be said how good of a freshman class this is. I think this is the best freshman class the legislature's ever had.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. No doubt about it.
And Mike, you brought a lot of Democrats over on this vote as well, though, and I think that deserves recognition too, because it wasn't just the freedom-loving conservatives who sided with you on this. You brought people over from the other side of the aisle.
Well, it's funny because a member of the Democratic caucus told me that they were all voting in block for that bill. And I think if my speech had any impact besides perturbing a handful of individuals, but if my speech did have any, I think it was on the Democratic caucus, because the language I was speaking was more to the Democratic base than it was the Republican base. And a lot of these guys were thinking, he's talking about my voters now. And it's like, and I think some of those guys started thinking, how would this look on me? And but I will say this much, and this is, I'm a big Republican, been active in the Republican State Committee. Every blue moon, you will see the Democratic caucus not vote en masse on bills, and that's something that needs to be appreciated, because I know a lot of folks go into this thing, they see things as these versus ours. Well, let me tell you, that's not the case. You've got people who have their individual constituencies. And sometimes the Democrats can be very helpful on certain bills where you've got overlapping constituencies, and this was one. And the reason why this bill was voted down so hard was due to Democrats.
Yep.
So,
Very much so.
Being engaged with everybody in the House, I think, is important. I know a lot of people want to just put the Democrats in a freezer and we run the party and we run the place and we don't need it. Well, first of all, you need 70 votes to get anything substantial done in the legislature, which means you're going to have to reach out, because you are going to have 2 or 3 Republican defectors on anything.
Always going to have some defectors in there, Mike. And I'll tell you, Danielle and I, you're so right about the Democrats. Danielle and I always keep a very close eye on the Democrats, and we've been favorably impressed with several of them on some very, very critical bills, a couple of whom we're actually going to have on our show at some point. So, yeah, writing them off reflexively is not good politics, and really, it's really not good philosophically either. And I think that's a very, very smart approach on your part.
Well, it's not responsible politics either, because as I tell everybody, they represent 42,000 people, just like I do. And their views may be different, their outlook may be different, their philosophy may be, but they represent 42,000 Louisianians. And when I get a note from anyone in the legislature who made this special trip to, even if I don't agree with them, even if I don't agree with their cause, I'll hear them out. And that's something, because you're not just showing your colleague respect, which is essential. You're showing respect and deference to 42,000 Louisianians who live in their district.
That's such a great perspective.
And you're showing deference and respect to the process.
Absolutely.
I'm excited to share a fantastic opportunity for State of Freedom listeners who are interested in investing in precious metals or even starting a home-based business in the precious metals industry. Metal Stacks is a precious metals collectors club where you can buy your metals at the best prices on the market, actual dealer cost. They are beating the big sites. They have no credit card fees and no minimums. If you're just interested in purchasing metals at a great price, visit metalstacks.com/dwalker. Get to shopping, that helps me out. I get the commission. You can also refer people to Metal Stacks for an additional income. If you're interested in learning about the referral business aspect of metal stacks, email me directly at Danielle@freedomstate.us for more information.
Well, Mike, I have a question before we move on, because Danielle, I know, has a question that intrigued us about what happened on the bill when it got over to the Senate. But before we move on, I want to ask you about it. One of the things that your experience in Florida certainly shows is that the hearings, quote, on these things, let's say you get cited for talking on your cell phone and so forth. I mean, there's really no guarantee that there's going to be a meaningful hearing on the matter. I know they have some language in the bill, but there's no guarantee that that's going to work out in practice. And the hearing that you have in Florida was really a sham. And when you have a bill that is really geared toward revenue harvesting for the state of Louisiana, the likelihood of there being any really objective hearing where evidence is heard, where due process rights are honored, where the confrontation clause is honored, is very, very slim. And that's one of the big concerns we had. And another big concern we had about this bill is the precedent that it sets for further infringements of human liberty. And I know that a lot of police officers are very honest, but there are police officers out there who are not very honest. And if they can get someone pulled over on the side of the road for talking on a cell phone, then the next thing you know, they're in their cell phone. The next thing you know, they're searching their car. The next thing you know, they're violating their freedom in other ways. So we thought that the bill not only was inherently bad, but it was a dangerous bill because of the precedent that it sets for further erosion of freedom. And that was a big objection we had.
Well, one of the concerns I had, and one of the arguments was that, well, you can't be pulled over just for that, unlike, say, Florida. And I think the bill was worded where it was not a primary ticketing event.
And that's meaningless.
But let me continue. What happens with every time you pass a law on something that says, oh, you can't be pulled over for this? A year or two later, they make a little bit of nudge, and it all of a sudden goes from secondary to primary. So once you open the door, it's just a matter of time before someone walks in. And that is something where you always got to man the barricade, because you're just setting yourself up for what they're saying that's not going to happen, but will happen later. So look, that's how it was with seatbelts, if I'm not mistaken. Seatbelts weren't a primary ticketing offense. Now it is. I should know. I got one the other day. First time back home in weeks after session, and just blocks from my home, I got nailed with a seatbelt ticket. In fact, I need to pay that sometime this week or something.
Rep. Bayham, we wanted to ask you as well. So you were able to see this bill killed. We were all celebrating, but remained vigilant, really because you were, I think, on red alert about this bill not really wanting to die a final death this session. And Senator McMath, who was the author of the legislation, added his bill back onto one of your bills as an amendment here at the 11th hour. And your bill was a simple requirement for signage notification for drivers that you're entering or exiting a school zone, and saying, hey, if those signs aren't up, you can't get a ticket for not adjusting your speed because you didn't necessarily have fair warning that you were in a school zone. Would you tell us about your bill and what happened with that amendment? I know you did successfully get it stripped off, which we were very, very happy to see.
Certainly. So one of my earliest bills that I filed, in fact, I think it may have been the first bill I delivered on the floor, was a bill that was what I call an anti-entrapment bill. Basically, if the sign's not positioned and you get flashed and you didn't know when the speed limit changed, coming or going, you shouldn't have to pay that ticket up to the previously posted speed limit. So, for example, if the speed limit's 35, you go to a school zone, it's 25, the sign ain't there, and you didn't know where the boundary was because the signage wasn't posted, and you're going 34, you shouldn't get ticketed. If you're driving 100 miles an hour through the school zone, guess what? You get ticketed from 35 miles up to 100 miles. So we weren't giving an immunity stick to anybody. We wanted to be fair to drivers that were going the speed limit and just weren't given proper notice. Now, fairly not uncontroversial bill in my opinion. Even the speed camera people didn't have a problem with it because, I mean, the speed camera industry has taken its lumps in the courts and in the press because there's been accusations of payoffs and bribes and so forth because this is big money. So I have a bill go through, is sitting in the Senate for a while, and I kept hearing chatter that the bill was going to get brought up, and I'm like, how are they going to do it? How are they going to do it? Well, lo and behold, my bill becomes the vessel of this, and then and this is not on Senator McMath, but other people who are advocating for this approach me said, look, we need your bill to go through with the amendments. I said, first of all, I just gave the speech of my life on the House against this thing. And you want my bill to be the one that brings this back? I said, are you crazy? I said, no, absolutely not. I mean, for multiple reasons here. Philosophically, politically, every reason. I'm not going to, I mean, this would be humiliating. I said, absolutely not. You're crazy. I'd sooner take my bill and put it in an icebox and let it die. Because I could tell you, this bill wasn't that important to me. You know, I care a lot more about the handheld matter than I do to speak. I could always bring back my speed camera sign bill. And we went back and forth. And it looked like my bill was just going to be in the freezer. In fact, I had some fun. One of the folks trying to get me to go keep the amendments on, I ran into him in one of the House offices, and there was a freezer in one of them. So I knew he was in the next room, and I took my bill, I stuck it in the freezer, and as he was walking, I said, hey, look, can you do me a favor? That the freezer door is a little jammed, and I hurt my arm. Can you reach in and grab me a popsicle? So he reached, got my bill out. It was freezing cold. So you see that bill, it's going to stay there. But so you got to have a sense of humor about it. However, so it's sitting in the Senate, and we started doing some last-second negotiations. Some lobbyists were pushing very aggressively, which I really resented that part. But at the end of the day, Senator Cathy of the Monroe area, he had also did an amendment that said you couldn't do speed cameras on private property. Now, I mean, I agree with that, and I welcome that addition to the bill. And so we got together with some of Senator McMath's friends, and we had a talk, and we came to an agreement that the bill that was attacked on would be removed. Senator Cathy's amendment would be retained, and the bill was passed by the Senate, 37 votes. I should add, Senator McMath was one of the 37 votes, and we got it back in the House, which, you know, passed fine. And I can honestly say the bill comes out so much better now than it started. Was the process painful?
Yeah, Mike, and that's sometimes the process, sometimes how it works out. I want to ask you about another question. Before I say this, I'll say, look, Senator McMath has done some good stuff this session. He got through a non-compete bill with regard to physicians, which is going to give them some real relief.
That I co-authored.
Yeah, that you co-authored. But this particular bill looks almost like it was sort of political retribution. And, if Mike's going to kill my bill, then you know what? I'm going to see what I can do to either get my bill, kill his bill.
Let me say this. I think some lobbyists were stirring the pot. And I had a visit with Senator McMath. And look, I never actually had a conversation with. I had to go Google his picture, see even what he looked like. I mean, I spend most of my time at the House. But in fact, we got little flashcards with the pictures of our colleagues, so we know who's talking to us. But fortunately, I know who everyone is now because I've spent a lot of time in the Senate. But it's so much nicer over there. Really, I envy them. But I had a good conversation with Senator McMath. I saw where I could see where a lobbyist was stirring a pot on him and took some social media posts and spun them in a way that was derogatory towards him. And that certainly wasn't my intent. Look, you're in the legislature. You are together for the next 4 years. And there is absolutely no point on being on bad terms with someone for the next 3.5 years. It's just, it's unnecessary. It leads to good bills getting, messed up due to personal grudges. And we had a great visit. And Senator, look, that conference report got through because Senator McMath did not object to it. And I think that's a credit to him. And we had a great conversation. And look, we will disagree with each other philosophically. I will never support a cell phone bill, period, ever. However, we had a great visit. And look, I'm new to this in terms of being on that side of the brass railing. Senator McMath is someone who's got an impressive background, construction, law degree, former assistant district attorney. We agree on a lot of other issues. And I'll admit, I put a little mustard on that hot dog on that speech. Kind of did a little Huey Long thing. But I was in a bad mood that day, and I really hate that bill. And look, as Barack Obama would say, and there are two things I quote him all the time. One, he likes to use the term teachable moment involving humility. And second is elections have consequences. On both of those counts, I agree with him 1,000%.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that this isn't an issue that's going to be a divisive one on a personal level. That's fantastic to hear because we have great respect for both of you.
Senator McMath's former colleague on the Covington Council is Representative Mark Wright, who is chairman of the Republican delegation. And Mark and I are pretty much political brothers. And Mark, look, when I'm going to tell you something about Mark Wright. When we went to the Republican National Convention in 2012, we were both Santorum delegates. And we actually had about 12 Santorum delegates. And the Romney people told us, well, we all have to vote for Romney. The Santorum people came to us and told us we all had to vote for Romney. And none of us wanted to vote for Romney because we knew exactly what he was. And I look at Mark and said, well, Mark, we're being told we got to vote for Mitt. And Mark looked me in the eye and said, Mike, I did not drive from Covington to Tampa to vote for Mitt Romney. And you know what, Mark? You know what? I'm not going to let you be on that beach by yourself. I'm
Awesome.
with you.
Well, look, you have to be happy that you didn't vote for Mitt Romney now.
Oh, in fact, you know what? I wanted to vote for Huckabee in 2008 at the Republican National Convention, but the state chairman at the party begged me and pleaded with me not to do that, so as not to put him in a bad spot. And that's one of those moments in my life I should have just said tough luck and did it. But you know what? One painful mistake in the past keeps you from repeating it in the future, and it emboldens you to make the right decision so many more times that point forward.
It's true. And, to switch gears a little bit, you had a bill, and I'm wondering if that's your sentiment towards this bill because of the way it played out. House Bill 111 would have been your proposed constitutional amendment to institute term limits for the governor. And I kind of kept in touch with you during the session about this, and you pulled it because it seemed inevitable that the Constitutional Convention was going to take place. Would you tell us why this is important and also whether you regret pulling it back?
I don't regret pulling it back because Governor Landry put a premium on his Constitutional Convention. And I wanted to give deference to the governor to give him a clear shot. They didn't want to pass any amendments to the Constitution this session. I think only one of them got through. And I wanted to defer to the governor. This is his first year. He has some compelling arguments for his convention. I supported it. In fact, I was happy that we were not doing this hybrid legislative session and convention because we ended up running all the way to 10 minutes before Sonny died at 6 p.m., which I warned everybody, even though I wasn't an incumbent. I told everybody, you will not have enough time in a day to do both of these things. You will have to rob Peter to pay Paul, and guess what? The legislature was going to be Peter. And we've already spent enough time in Baton Rouge not making money, so a living. But so I wanted to defer to the governor on this. There were people who basically told me that they would not vote for any amendment for those reasons. And rather than have a good issue go down to a defeat, not because of its merits, but because of a position that, hey, that we're not doing amendments this year, I decided to pull the bill. Now, there was a move to table it. We beat that motion, but recognizing the political reality and wanting to accommodate the governor, we shelved it. Now, we are not having a gubernatorial election until the year 2027. I fully intend to bring this bill up again in 2026, and I'm not going to back off of it.
Good.
Take that to the bank. I'm going to tell you why. If you've read Louisiana political history, you will learn that the two most powerful figures in the state politically are not the governor and the lieutenant governor, the governor and the former governor. And we have seen Earl Long, Edwin Edwards meddle in the administrations of all of the people that succeeded them, just so that they could sandbag them so they could then come back. Edwin did it to Romer. Edwin did it to Treen. Earl Long did it to other people. By the way, no coincidence, those are the only two governors we've had that have served more than 2 terms. And to be brutally honest, we are a state of 4 million people. Do not tell me that there are indispensable individuals that we must have as the governor 16 years in a 30-year period. Not the case. I mean, America has only had 2 indispensable presidents, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. Now, we've had some great other presidents that certainly history wouldn't be the same without them, but there wouldn't be the United States of America if not for those 2. Now, Louisiana, we are 50th in everything that's good and first in everything that's bad. I cannot see where we have had indispensable leadership in the governorship. So I believe that we have enough people and enough talent and enough ability. We can let new generations of leaders go to the front. And if you've been governor 2 terms, you've had one of the greatest honors to be bestowed upon by the citizens of this state. Move on and do something else. If you want to be a congressman, run for Congress. If you want to be U.S. Senator, run for U.S. Senator. If you want to be in retirement and make money, fine. But don't say that we need you back. I mean, because you're holding back other people that can really make a big impact.
And it's cathartic, Mike. It's cathartic for the system. It's cathartic for the system to be able to remove and replace electorally people who have been in political office for a substantial period of time. It's just good for the system to replace people periodically, and that includes the governor.
I mean, look, you will not find the solutions to the future in the leadership of the past. And things change. Phones change, computers change, society changes. You need to have someone with a modern perspective that's fluent in the language and in the mentality of that time. And I just don't look, Edwin Edwards, this state did not benefit from an extra 8 years of Edwin Edwards. And I don't think Edwin Edwards benefited from an extra 8 years of Edwin Edwards. He probably would have never seen the inside of a federal prison if his political career would have ended in 1980 when Dave Tring took the oath of office. So we need to just get beyond that. Let a governor be able to govern to the best of his or her ability without being interfered with by, and I'm not saying John Bell's done this to Jeff Landry, but I am saying previous governors have done this in the past.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mike, I'm very, very glad to hear that you are going to bring this legislation again next year. Very good piece of legislation.
Well, we're limited to 5 bills, and I need to make those 5 count. 2026 would allow us, and by the way, 2026 will also be your next highest voter participation turnout, which is what I would want because we'd have a U.S. Senate race on the ballot.
Well, we're going to be here fighting alongside you, Mike. it was an honor for us to be able to work with you this session, particularly on this cell phone bill, which we believe is government overreach at its finest. Look forward also moving forward in 2026 on your term limits legislation for the governor and everything else that you have up your most adept political sleeve. And we appreciate you very much, and we hope you have a great summer.
Well, look, thank you for hosting me on your show. We need to have our citizens engaged, which y'all do. Y'all have had a great presence at the legislature throughout this session. That's so important because the Democrats and the left, they have a constant presence there, and we really don't. And we really, it's conservative activists such as y'all that help. And look, Gene Mills does a great job as well with Family Forum. He does a great job, but the left's got so many more people there. And what y'all do really does make a difference, and it contributes. And I don't doubt the role y'all played in helping with getting some good bills passed and ensuring some bad bills did not pass.
Well, thank you so much, Representative.
Well, thank you for that, Mike.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you, and we appreciate the fight that you've been in for this session.
Happy to do so, and reach out anytime, and we may be back at some point. So keep your eyes peeled.
We will. We certainly will.
Keep in touch, Mike. Keep in touch with us. God bless you. Have a great day.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to The State of Freedom. To stay on top of all the calls to action we mentioned today, just check out the show notes for the episode. If you'd like to support the show financially, visit our website at freedomstate.us. If you'd prefer to give by mail, you can send a check to The State of Freedom, LLC at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. If you own a business in Louisiana and are interested in supporting our show by advertising, please email us at info@freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org, LACAG.org, or email Chris at chris@lacag.org. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and share it. Give us a 5-star rating in the reviews. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.